Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Pattern Seekers, How Autism Drives Human Invention by Simon Baron-Cohen. Narrated by Jonathan Cowley. Publisher's note. In this audio edition, you will hear references to figures and tables present in the print and ebook formats of the book. Sometimes it is the people no one can imagine anything of who do the things no one can imagine. Alan Turing, The Imitation Game. Chapter 1. Born Pattern Seekers. Al didn't talk until he was 4 years old. Even when he started talking, it was clear he was using language differently to most kids. His mind was different right from the start. He was less interested in people and more focused on spotting patterns, and he wanted explanations for everything he saw. He asked people incessant why questions to understand how things worked. It was exhausting for his listeners. His unstoppable curiosity was at one level refreshing, yet his need for complete explanations was also often just too much for others. He was clearly a different kind of child. He showed some other unusual characteristics too. For example, he would chant Thomas Gray's elegy written in a country churchyard over and over, a habit that lasted his whole life. At school, his teachers became exasperated with his persistent questioning. One teacher, in frustration, described Al's brain as addled, meaning confused. But Al's mind was anything but confused. Rather, his relentless questions were requests for greater clarity because he found other people's explanations of how things work vague. He wanted to build up an orderly, evidence-based picture of the world. From his perspective, everyone else's way of thinking was sloppy and imprecise. But his mother was worried. She could see that her son was frequently being reprimanded in class and put down by his teachers, and she worried this would damage his self-confidence. She needed to act decisively. So when he was 11, she decided to pull him out of school completely and to homeschool him. This was not a decision she took lightly. But given his insatiable appetite for knowledge and the school viewing him so negatively, this seemed the right thing to do. Her child had a right to learn in the way that suited his different kind of mind. Free of the constraints of a conventional school, Al's mother watched with amazement as her son devoured books at home and at the local library. When Al read an account of how something worked, whether it was in chemistry or physics, he would rush down to the basement of the house to conduct his experiments to prove that the explanation was true. Free of school, he could finally pursue his passion for seeking patterns in the world without a teacher telling him to sit still, stop asking questions, and do what he was told. Homeschooling was a liberating gift from mother to son. No longer imprisoned by group learning, Al could finally choose what, when, and how to learn through individual learning. This suited his mind perfectly, because he was never content to be told by a teacher how something worked, but instead always wanted evidence to verify it for himself. He needed to question all evidence and test things out for himself. His was a mind that didn't follow the crowd. Instead, he wanted to understand things from first principles to check that his knowledge was true. Al's mother could clearly see that her son's learning style was different. Some described it as pedantic, obsessive, rigid, precise, and exhaustive. For example, when it came to reading in the library, Al would start by reading the last book on the bottom shelf, then systematically read every book in the order they were on the shelves above, not randomly jumping around the bookshelves. He would follow an unbending rule, one book at a time, in a strict, linear sequence, so he could be sure he hadn't missed any information. Even though he was most interested in scientific and technical books, he would never deviate from his rule. And he loved rules, because rules were themselves patterns. By the age of 12, Al had read Newton's Principia, taught himself physics, questioned theories of electricity, and conducted his own experiments at home to see if they were right. By age 15, Al had become fascinated by Morse code, the ultimate language of patterns. And once he became interested in anything, he had to master it. He couldn't understand how most people would just dip into lots of topics superficially, since for him a topic had to be understood completely. It was all or nothing. He loved how in Morse code the same underlying message could be mapped onto patterns in a variety of ways, using auditory clicks, light flashes, or written symbols. He loved how each letter was a unique sequence of dots or dashes, how a dot was a unit of time, and how a dash was equal to 3 dots in duration. He loved how a letter was like a musical note, some worth 1 beat, others 2 or 4 beats. He grasped the patterns intuitively. He was a born pattern seeker. When Al was 16, he left home. He wandered the country and discovered that his Morse code skills could earn him money working as a telegraph operator. But at night he would follow his deeper interests, staying up till the small hours, still performing his moonlight experiments on whatever machinery he could lay his hands on. Just as when he was a child, he still loved taking things apart to see how they had been assembled, to see what controlled what. And then, when he had done that, he was just as excited to reassemble them. At age just 16, Al produced his first public invention. His automatic repeater was a device that could transmit Morse code signals between unmanned telegraph stations so that anyone could translate the code when it suited them. And as we shall hear, he would go on inventing right through his adult life. 2-year-old Jonah was another child who, like Al, was not yet talking. But unlike Al's mother, who stayed calm, Jonah's mother panicked. She was distraught that everyone else's kid was chattering away, so she took her little boy to a pediatric clinic to be assessed. She watched anxiously as the pediatrician did various tests. The doctor could see that Jonah's mother was worried and thought it might help to show her a chart outlining how every child's language development is different. Can you see how toddlers vary in their rate of language development? They're just different. And which track you end up on depends to some extent on your genes. Still very upset, Jonah's mother tried to focus on the chart, but just couldn't understand it. She explained to the doctor that all the different lines just seemed confusing. She tried to hold back her tears. The doctor put a hand on the arm of Jonah's mother to comfort her as she continued her explanation. You see the solid black line? These are the average kids. And the top line are the early talkers, who are super sociable, the chatty ones. The bottom line are the late talkers, who are more spatial, more musical, more mathematical. They love patterns. The doctor turned to her, waited as if to gauge how much to say, and said, Jonah is one of these kids. They're just not that interested in chatting, but are fascinated by how things work. These kids are not better or worse than those on the other tracks. They're just different. The doctor again paused, and seeing that Jonah's mother was now calming down, she said, I love these kids because they show originality. They may be late to talk, but when they start talking, what they say is so much more interesting. Some of them end up as talented musicians or chess players. Some are gifted in math, gardening, cooking, building bicycles, carpentry, or photography. They are perfectionists who love detail. They spot things that other kids miss. Jonah's mother was now leaning forward, paying attention to the chart, her tears gone. Then the doctor got out her pen and drew a big X. A lot of the kids I see in this clinic are just like Jonah, where the X is, and I've seen them grow up. Some end up as engineers or artists who show originality, successful businessmen or women with a new angle, or scientists who can see patterns in data and make discoveries. She turned to Jonah's mother. And you know what? I was one of these kids. Apparently, I didn't talk till I was 3, and I grew into one of those kids who just loved science. The doctor smiled for a moment, and then looked Jonah's mother straight in the eye. Be proud of Jonah. He's just on a different track. Believe me, he'll start talking when he's ready. And if other parents ask why Jonah's not talking yet, just say, he's different, but not worse. Just before his 3rd birthday, Jonah did finally start talking, but how he used language was unusual. When he spoke, he didn't look up at people to address them. nor did he use...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?